When we first arrived to Mount Vernon, the sky was gray and it was drizzling. However, as fate was on our side, the sky cleared and the weather was great. Here's a view of the entrance to Mount Vernon with a nice sunny sky in the background. After our tour of the estate, everyone stood by for group pictures on the back lawn. Much to our surprise, we were visited by a very special guest, the President himself.
And I was Major George Washington. How do you go from no military experience to being Major George Washington? And the answer is you buy your commission. Rank. Believe me, if I had more money, I would have purchased a higher rank. But that's not the way it's done anymore here in America. I ended that. How are you young fellows doing?
Good.
Glad to hear it. You're about to embark upon your garden tour, is that correct?
Yes.
You've all been fed? You've had dinner? Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. I don't know that we have a fair amount of time because I don't want to take you away from your tour, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have of particular note if you have any questions for me. If you're afraid to ask the first question, I'll take the second question first.
Ron asked me a question that I couldn't answer.
Sir?
His question was, how did Mount Vernon get its name?
It is originally called Little Hunting Creek Farm. That's when my father owns it. And when my father dies, I was only a lad of 11, my father dies, he leaves this property to my beloved half-brother, Lawrence Washington. And Lawrence was a Marine, and he served in the Royal Navy. He was a war hero of the Battle of Cartagena, which did not go well for Great Britain, but he was still a hero. And he served under a British naval admiral whose name was Edmund Vernon. And so he so honored and beloved his commanding officer, I'm sure all of you can relate to that, that he named the property in honor of Admiral Vernon. There you are. An otherwise infinitely forgettable naval admiral in America becomes remembered forever. Sir, I see you're just in from the wilderness. No time for a bath. Of course, we can arrange a shave here.
No, thanks.
All right. Well, perhaps in June. Perhaps in June. Your tour is about to begin, is that correct?
No, General, actually we hear you were an aide. Could you give us a little bit of information about the time when you started as an aide?
When I was an aide? Well, I was an aide more than once. I was an aide on a rather ill-fated mission. British General Braddock, are you familiar with Braddock? We, of course, were trying to take... There was a war of empire going on. You need to understand the greater context. And it was a war that was called the 7 Years' War. Here in North America, of course, we called it the French War, or the French and Indian War. And this is a war that's being fought as far away as the Philippines and India. It's being fought in the Afrique. It's being fought in Europe, and of course it's being fought extensively in North America. The war in North America was over the future of this continent, what we called the Ohio country, to the west. And the problem with the Ohio country is that there were three great nations all laying claim to the Ohio. Of course, the French claimed it. Have you heard of LaSalle? LaSalle had been there 150 years before I was there. He was laying markers down everywhere, so he claims it for king and country. And then, of course, there are the Aboriginals, the Indians. They claim it based on residency. They'd lived there for probably 1,000 years. And then Great Britain claims it, and we claim it based on royal proclamation. The king's signature on a piece of parchment is what is our hold on the land. So my first mission as a soldier was actually to take an eviction notice up to the French. Do you youngins know what an eviction notice is? It's a notice that says, get off of our land. And we told the French to get off the land. The problem is the French saw this as French land and they told us, au contraire. It is you British that must get off of the French land. And it goes down the hill from there. So one of my missions where I served as an aide, of course, was to General Braddock. And our objective was to take Fort Duquesne. It was a French fort. It sat at the Three Rivers in western Pennsylvania. The Ohio, the Monongahela, the Allegheny River. And it was a rather ill-fated mission because we were we were fairly close to Fort Duquesne. And I was pleading with General Braddock to please allow me to take my Virginians and to fan out as early warners and skirmishers. Why? Because the wooded area was so dense. You know, they say that a squirrel could enter the Pennsylvania wilderness at one end and not touch the ground for 100 miles. Tree to tree to tree to tree. Braddock was trying to utilize conventional, continental, meaning the continent, European, or British manner of fighting, what you do in an open field. And he said to me, and he was a good fellow, don't get me wrong, but he said to me, Colonel Washington, I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, but my day and time of taking advice from a provincial officer, said with a sneer, a provincial officer, has long since passed. He was mortally wounded. Less than 2 hours later, most of the officers were wounded or killed. I actually took over command, and we beat an organized retreat. That's the best I can say for that day. And so that was a rather ignoble service as an aide. And interestingly enough, I was a volunteer aide. As I have done for many things in my life, I served for no pay and for no profit. Other questions?
General, if you don't mind, we'd like to take a group photo with you really quickly, and then we have to start our tour.
I understand, madam. Listen, you apparently are the general, so you organize what you will. Do you want the house in the back or the western in the back?
We can do the bit this way, yes, sir. Just.
You want
So,
that in the background?
Yes, sir. You stand where you are, and we'll move up on you.
You know, just so you understand what you're looking at, that's the western entrance to Mount Vernon, and I made this the front of the house. When I inherited Mount Vernon, the front of the house was the riverside. And the river, the Potomac River, leads to the Chesapeake, which leads to the Atlantic, which led to Mother England. I turned my back on the king. Deliberately, madam, and I made that the front of the house. And originally, when I first took over, one last point, there was a straight road right from those gatehouses straight up here to the circle. And then I changed the landscaping to the English style of naturalistic landscaping, so there was a serpentine to go in and out of the woods. And every time you would come into the opening, you'd be a little closer to the house. And then you'd go into the woods again and you'd lose the house again. You'd curve around, you'd come back a little closer, and it was tantalus. And you knew that soon you would be fed, you would be watered, you would have a bed. Couldn't wait, couldn't wait. Please, why don't you form around me?
We all really enjoyed President Washington and wanted to hear more, but it was time to tour the gardens.
Let's go up here into the upper garden.
As I was filming the garden, President Washington snuck up behind me to give a little more history on his garden.
You know, sir, I have a very practical side, because not only is there beauty in the perimeter, everything on the interior is edible.
The flowers in this lush garden were absolutely stunning, and we all took in the history and beauty throughout the tour. In the background, you're looking at the greenhouse, reconstructed to look much like it did in George Washington's day.
One of my favorites. In the evening, General Washington showed us his garden. It's well cultivated and neatly kept. Well, actually, this lower garden was Mrs. Washington's garden that we're about to see. He speaks of everything that was growing here. Now, I mentioned the beauty of the gardens and such, and some of the technology with the greenhouse. Actually, both of the gardens here are highly involved with technology of the period. It's not by accident they're made of brick. Why go to that trouble? These walls here around them made of brick, because it absorbs the warmth of the sun. And therefore, we're in a colder climate. You know, in England, they would like to use bricks or stone at times in different parts of Europe, because in the spring the sun would heat them up, and many times people would train their plants to grow along them. No exception here. You notice that we have fruit trees trained along these outer walls and upper and lower garden. That's because of the warmth. You train them when they're young. Your stone fruits, such as your peaches and cherries and such, were usually trained to grow against the walls.
We all enjoyed the tour of Mount Vernon, and now it's time to visit the Sequoia, the presidential yacht. With all the walking we did, we have to commend this young man for making it through on crutches. Here's a view of the Sequoia from the docks, standing majestic as it has done since it served our first president. Signing the guest book on the Sequoia was a special treat for everyone, and I gave my wonderful wife, Michelle, the honor of signing it for us. As we enter the main cabin, we pass by an elegant piano that we're told President Nixon used to enjoy playing. Everyone had a great time, and one of the favorite things to do was to pose for pictures in front of the Sequoia logo.
He danced for us. He's a little bit surly, but he's one, two, three. And so,
I'll do another one.
okay, wait, you know what? This is my good side.
Oh, okay.
One,
two,
Welcome aboard the Sequoia. This is, as you know, the presidential yacht. We're here to be viewed, I guess. There's one place that we ask that people don't go unless you really want to see it. It's through this door. We have the little kitchen and the engine rooms are downstairs. And unless you're really interested in seeing the engines that run the boat, there's nothing pretty down there. Feel free to go downstairs, take a look in all the bedrooms. We just ask that nobody takes any drinks downstairs. And apart from that, my name's Patrick. Carlos is the other crew. He's the one he's in the bar.
Carlos.
We're more than happy to answer any and all questions you have. Of any nature. Some of them we may not know the answer to. That I do not know.
Are you a captain?
No, not yet. I wish. A couple months and I'd be able to take us out of here.
Sweet.
But yeah, apart from that, welcome guys. Enjoy yourselves. Please feel free to take as many pictures as you like. Walk around. The wheelhouse is up forward. You're also more than welcome up there. We have a couple cool things up there from back when the Navy still was in charge of the vessel. And yeah, welcome and enjoy yourselves.
Thank you.
How long was it in the presidential service?
Oh yeah, right there.
Hoover was
on
the
left.
first president
Get
to have the boat under him, and I believe that was in 34. It was a rough guesstimate to mid-70s when Carter got rid of it. So there were 9 presidents, Hoover through Carter, who all had it. The bar, as it was replaced by an elevator for. Was it Roosevelt? Who was in the wheelchair? Yeah, he wanted to be able to get downstairs and go to sleep, so he had the bar pulled out and an elevator installed. And when Johnson, the drinker that he was, got on board, he said, "Well, I don't need an elevator. I'd like to have my bar back."
Because I have my own way of getting up.
And he also,
I'm good.
as you of being a man of a tall stature, you would appreciate this. The shower in the presidential room was actually, the floor was lowered 3 inches, so that he wouldn't have to hunch over while he was taking a shower.
So do you know why, you said Carter was the last to use it and kind of decommissioned it. Do you know why they decided not to keep it anymore?
Well, he thought that it was a little too much for the president. You know, he had this whole don't play hail to the chief for me.
Call me Jimmy.
Yeah, call me Jimmy. He didn't want to have the boat. He thought it was too much. And his wife was not too happy about it. She'd been dying to spend a lot of time on this boat, and then he got rid of it. She was probably the person least happy with this decision.
So there is no more presidential yacht.
There is no more presidential yacht. You know, the yacht back then was sort of like the limousine or the helicopter of the time, and now that there are helicopters and planes, there's no real use for a presidential yacht. It's also not as safe as those because it's kind of a slow sitting duck out on the river.
When the captain's aboard.
Yes. Otherwise, we're a very slow sitting duck tied to the dock.
Where was she berthed when she was the presidential yacht?
Right up in the Navy Yard.
Navy Yard.
They had a little slip with sort of like a railway system, because she's so big and heavy you can't pull her out of the water the same way you do most boats. You have 2 straps and they just kind of lift it out and set it down. She wouldn't really work. So they have a railway system. You pull her into it and then they slide pieces of wood, specially made for it to pull it out, and then she sits there for a couple months while we do work on the hull.
Who owns it now?
Gary Silversmith. He's a lawyer. So this is actually his first boat. Most people start small and then he bought this. But it was actually really good that he did, because it had been sitting at dry dock for many years and was starting to fall apart. And Japan had actually put in a bid to buy it, and they were going to turn it into a museum or something. And the guys called Gary, and they knew he was a collector of presidential. A lot of this stuff here is actually part of his his personal collection. And they said, well, we've got a big piece of memorabilia. You want to buy the boat? And he said, of course, love to. So he's had it for 12 years now. And
How long have you worked for him then, right?
yes, I've been here for 2 years.
Just, I don't know, maybe I'm the only gray beard here right now, but it used to be an outing for the social aides. And that, go back to the Nixon era and we actually had an afternoon on the Sequoia, which was just for the social aides. And we got a nice certificate, I still have it, that says, we sailed on the presidential yacht of President Nixon, it's Captain Edmund F. Feig on there. So this, I don't know how many know that.
No,
it was a normal outing for social aides.
Many a boat was swung on this, but it was actually one of the hottest tickets was to be able to come out with the president on his boat and have cocktails and food. And what he used to do is he would sail and past Mount Vernon, where you all were earlier, and everybody would go up on the top deck and salute to the first president. And a lot of presidents won a lot of votes for a lot of things they wanted by bringing people on the boat. And that's one thing that Carter missed out on when he sold it. He didn't realize was that it helped get your points across when you're able to persuade people with dinner and cocktails.
In a place where you're out of water, and then you just walk away.
Yes. And also back then, there was no air conditioning, so to be able to get out on the water and be moving, as opposed to stuck in a White House office, it was very nice for them.
When was this built?
1925, up in I believe Massachusetts, for a private owner. Then the family wanted something a little bigger, so they sold it. The family that bought it ran out of money and couldn't afford it, so it was then purchased by the Commerce Department, and they actually used it to catch prohibitioners, because they would just be out on the water cruising, and all the booze runners would come out and go, "Oh, here's a very rich family. They must want some alcohol." And then the Commerce Department would go, "Okay, we'll take it all, and you can come with us, and we'll lock you up when we get back." And then that's actually where Hoover, he got his start in the Commerce Department. He said, "Well, I really like this boat." So when he became president, he went, "Well, I kind of want to have my own boat." Because there had been presidential yachts before, but they were mostly bigger, 200-foot steel vessels. And he went, "Well, here we are in Washington. We don't really have room for a 200-foot mega yacht here on the Potomac. We want something a little smaller, a little nicer." And that's where Sequoia got her start as a presidential yacht.
How many people are
Her number for travel is 49.
It'll sleep 49?
Oh no, it sleeps 5 or 6 down here, depending if there's a married couple in the presidential room. That'd be 6, and then all the crew quarters are up further. We use them for tool storage and everything now. But there's actually a crew of 12 or 13, maybe even more at the time, who would all take shifts and they would all sleep up there. It's not very comfortable. But she comfortably sleeps 6 people, and I encourage you all to go take a look at the rooms. They're beautiful. And
so they had the hot bunk then, if there were 49 on board?
Yeah. Well, it would not, it's 49 is our cruising number.
Sure.
Anything more than that, and the Coast Guard will not allow us to leave the dock because of stability issues. Which is a very shallow draft, which is the amount of boat that sits under the water. You can actually see there's a nice scale model right on the other side of that lamp, and it's about 95% accurate. So we only They have about 4 feet of water underneath it, just 19 across, 104 long. So too much weight, and she could potentially just roll over. So that's why we have our Coast Guard number.
Interesting they had a number instead of a weight limit.
Well, the number is based off of, I guess, the average weight.
150 pounds.
Yeah, they fill up, call it 160-pound barrels, and they set them up top and move them from side to side and see how much it sways, and from that they're able to deem what number of people she can hold while still being perfectly safe in 30, 35 mile an hour winds.
As we walk towards the bow of the ship, you can get a feel for how big it is. We are heading towards the pilot house to see if we might find the captain there, although he's been AWOL all day. Well, there's a Coast Guard officer's cap. That's probably the most we'll see out of the captain today. Yes, sure enough, the pilot house is completely empty with no captain to set sail. But there's no need to worry. Here's the retired Coast Guard chief and webmaster ready to tackle the job at hand. Well, that sure was fun. But now it's time to move towards the stern and into the aft cabin, where people are relaxing, much like they've done since the boat was first commissioned. Now we'll head topside, where many presidents and distinguished guests would relax with a nice cold drink and take in the sun. Now we'll head down below, where the staterooms are located. We are now entering the aftmost cabin, which is fairly spacious and sleeps two. This is the center cabin, and although much smaller, also sleeps two. Here we have the spacious presidential stateroom, with a large bed and private bathroom, a desk for reading or working, and sitting for guests or relaxation.
Okay, I think we have most folks here. Again, this is the last time you'll have to listen to me. Again, very much thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you for being so super flexible about everything. We really appreciate everyone's patience, and I hope you got to enjoy walking around and seeing the Sequoia. I mean, it's certainly a unique part of history that some of us have experienced firsthand, which is absolutely fascinating, and that many of us would have enjoyed experiencing. And this is as close as we get. One of the things that we like to do in this society is it's important to Ken and also to the rest of us to recognize some of our society members. You know, the society is such a fantastic group of unique folks who've gone off and done amazing things both in the military and the civilian part of the world. We have aides that had served in many presidencies past, up into our current aides that are now serving for President Obama. And in our group, we are lucky to have several of the currently serving aides, all of our aides, now we call them our young aides. We have a large group of them, so it's unique for us. And the society doesn't exist or continue to exist without the new aides continuing to sign up and be a part of it. And so please go back and tell all your fellow friends what a fantastic time you had today, and encourage them to join. And if you do a life membership right from the start, it's the best way to do. I'm just, a little plug for the life membership. But one of the things that we want to do is a lot of times we recognize our most junior aide, and we usually do junior aide by age. It's just the way we happen to do things. And so we have that with us today. Stephanie Young, if you'll come this way. Gracing us with her presence, fellow Coastie. Not that I'm a Coastie, go Army, beat Navy. Our Navy folks in the back. But Stephanie is a current aide serving with President Obama, and I'm sure she's got some fantastic stories if you want to ask and kind of compare experiences. But what we have for you today is this is a book by Mike Bond. He's also one of the members of our society. He worked in the Situation Room during some very fantastic times, and he was nice enough to donate a couple copies of his book. And so to connect some of the past of the society to the current serving members of society, we wanted to present you this book as a thank you for being a part and for coming.
Thank you so
and
much.
Thanks. The camera again. But really appreciate you being here. Again, please do tell all your friends to come and join. And we plan to do much more exciting things along the way. If anyone has any great ideas, we're always welcome to cool and fun things we'd like to do. We'd like to capitalize on some of your great experiences. I mean, everyone has fantastic stories. So let us know what your stories are and what you've done and how you think we should improve. So other than that, if y'all are pretty much good with the tour, everyone's pretty wrapped up. So what we'll do is we'll make our way back to the bus. Thank you to the crew for hanging out for us. And we appreciate it.
And can we all give a round of applause to Avis and Kelly?
Awesome! So thanks again for being here, and we'll just go up and everyone have a safe and happy next couple weeks. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call, let us know.